Hello and welcome back to the only podcast that has now seen one comedy and is already too self-conscious to write another joke. I'm Max.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Pause for Thought. Presenting More for Thought.
More for Thought! I forget every time. So we're not talking Star Wars.
We're not talking Star Wars. Today we are talking Deadpool and Wolverine and kind of in general the state of Marvel, because obviously Comic-Con was this past weekend and there was a bunch of news that came out of it. So it was just kind of perfect timing because we also just saw Deadpool and thought that would make a good More for Thought, because obviously we're really big Marvel fans, or at least I am, because I constantly try to bring it up on the podcast and you two always want to shut me down. So
I prefer Star Wars.
today I finally get my way and we are talking Marvel and Deadpool and Wolverine specifically. So I'm super excited. But before we go farther, I do want to let everyone know we are going to be talking a bunch of spoilers. And so if you haven't seen the movie and you want to see the movie, feel free to turn off this podcast, go watch it, but then come back and give this another listen, because we do still want to have you listen to us, obviously.
Yes, and
What was that shut? You disagree?
We're not begging for views. If you want to go for it.
We're fucking begging, Matthew. Come on. Please come back and watch us. Or give it a second listen. Listen now, and then go back, and then come back. So, anyway. So we're going to talk about, like I said, Deadpool and Wolverine. But first, I do want to talk about some of the news that came out from San Diego Comic-Con, starting with the biggest news of all, which is that Robert Downey Jr. himself is apparently coming back to the MCU as Victor Von Doom.
They made a big point to say Victor Von Doom specifically, right? And so I think...
Did they? I was going to say they made a big point to say Dr. Doom specifically and not Victor Von Doom.
I don't know.
I don't think we know that it's Victor Von Doom. I think it might very well be Tony Stark variant who takes up the moniker Dr. Doom.
Yeah, everyone's kind of... I mean, all the comments are a rage about if certain comics will come into play or not, and people are like, only true fans will know this, or other people are like, this actually doesn't happen, and it's really interesting to see that war in the comment section so far. I thought that was a great reveal. I would love to be in Hall H when that happened.
I know, the reveal was ecstatic.
I hate the video when they just show him standing on stage, though. It's so much cooler to see all the Doctor Dooms, and then he walks to the center in a slightly different green.
Yeah.
And take his mask off. It's chilling to see. It does. I think you texted this, Max, yesterday when you were just like, it feels like it's all like full-out scrambling, right? To kind of like undo everything they did, obviously with the Kang Dynasty. I mean, obviously Deadpool and Wolverine is, pokes a lot of fun at where the state of the MCU is at currently, and I feel like having that understanding, they're bringing the Russos back to direct, fellow Clevelanders as well, and then also bringing on Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it just feels like they're trying to reset it, at least to, I mean, obviously they were nixing the whole King Dynasty, presumably, or going to wrap it up somehow, and it's going to be kind of the dark stain in the MCU, and then...
I mean, they did. I don't think they made a big deal about it, but they very silently just completely scrapped it, because I think the Kang Dynasty was supposed to be Avengers 5, and they completely renamed it to Doomsday. So it does reek of desperation, because, yes, I think you're absolutely right. They're looking at the state of the multiverse, and they're like, people aren't liking this. What do? We need to do something. Bring back the Russo brothers. Bring back Iron Man. Iron Man's dead. The fans wouldn't like that. All right, bring back Robert Downey Jr. He'll be a variant. We'll figure it out. And they're just like, look, we've had some flops recently. This movie needs to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
And as will become very apparent throughout the rest of this episode, I'm a whore for Marvel. So they're probably going to get my money, and I'm sure this movie is going to make $1 billion.
I would imagine.
I'm excited. There's a tinge of excitement to have him back as well. Like, again, with the state of like Deadpool and Wolverine was really fun, which we'll talk about. Fantastic Four, we're going to talk about that as well, is exciting. Just because that cast alone and the style, but then also having Doctor Doom, again, we'll see. I know people are really big Victor Von Doom fans, so I feel like if it is a variant, it is going to be a little wonky, I feel like, for some fans.
It's going to be difficult. I mean, there are 1,000 ways it can go wrong, and only one way it can go right in my mind. And I would not be surprised if they made it go right, but it just seems so risky. Like, it seems...
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a big Marvel fan and a big Robert Downey Jr. fan, and my immediate reaction was not explicit excitement. Like, I was a lot more cautious than I was happy at first, and my feelings haven't really changed.
It feels
yet.
like if the Avengers are now, Ant-Man and that kind of core group, you're kind of robbing the Fantastic Four. I mean, they are not going to do Doctor Doom presumably in the Fantastic Four film. We know that takes place in like the 60s and like the space race era, right? Which we're going to talk about in a few. But you're kind of robbing them of their main villain, which seems a little odd. But at the same time, they've done it so much within. They obviously they've redone Fantastic Four twice, technically, right? In the fact of having the ones in 2002 and the one in 2015,
2005.
2005. No, was it that?
Mm-hmm.
Damn. All right. When was Silver Surfer? You sure?
After 2006 or 7, I would guess.
Interesting. I would have guessed. I thought Silver Surfer maybe in 2005, and the other one was 2003. Someone fact check that.
Yeah, we'll have
and
to
then
get a producer on it.
But either way, they've done Doctor Doom twice now, and it's like I'm kind of glad that there's like, okay, we're gonna kind of take this option out of the equation, which is nice because it's like, how many times do we need to see like Batman's parents die or something? It's like when they redo something, so it'll be nice to not have that kind of be settled into that. But at the same time, if this is Avengers taking place in modern day, but then also having the Fantastic Four back then, it's going to be a little odd. Again, unless you do the multiverse variant stuff, but it's like it's just so confusing, I feel like, too. That's a problem with the multiverse. It's like, let's maybe shut that shit down.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with the multiverse, and I think that's going to be a recurring theme throughout this episode because it is presumably going to be some sort of variant. I don't think Marvel has a very deep bench of iconic villains.
No.
They have Doctor Doom is probably the second most iconic Marvel villain after Magneto. Other than that, I feel like you have some pretty iconic Spider-Man villains.
Galactus, too.
You got Doc Ock and you got Green Goblin. I disagree. I don't think Galactus is like that iconic of a villain so much as he is. He's like a really big villain.
Mm-hmm. I think the image of
like
him, everyone knows who that is, though.
I don't think so.
Really?
I think he's
Yeah,
lesser known.
I don't know because in the comics too, Thanos is not like that huge. Like he's not like an icon in the Marvel comics. Like obviously he was like the big bad in the entire first saga, the Infinity Saga of the Marvel movies, so everyone knows who he is, and he's had like a huge boom since then. But I mean, I don't know, like he's not like synonymous with Marvel villains.
Yeah.
If you were to ask somebody like name the best Marvel villains back in 2005,
excluding the movies, I agree because I remember watching at the end of Avengers and the post-credit scene is Thanos, a very purple Thanos, turning to the camera, or was it very blue? And everyone was like, oh, who the fuck is that? Like most people.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting
that's
it.
how I
Yes.
reacted.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was Doctor Doom or Magneto, people would be like, I know exactly
Instant
who that
recognition,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, the multiverse, it has a lot of problems. Very low stakes because you can bring back anyone as anything, and presumably that's what this Doctor Doom is because why is it played by Robert Downey Jr.? There's really only one reason. I am going to be so shocked if they bring back Robert Downey Jr. and he's not an Iron Man variant or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think it is, and I really like the Russo brothers and I trust them, but I am kind of skeptical about that, and I'm hoping that they keep Iron Man's legacy intact while still doing the character of Doctor Doom justice as well.
I mean, they had to have scrambled within the past 4 months to really figure out a new plan, right?
Yeah, because it's all happened with Jeffrey Major's conviction,
Jonathan.
right?
Jonathan
Majors.
I was like,
Sorry, guys, I'm not. I don't know the names of all these rapists like you. Apparently, actually, I say that. I don't even know if that's what
Yeah, was he a rapist?
convicted
I
of.
thought
was
he-
I think he
was it
beat
sexual
people.
assault or domestic violence?
that was domestic violence.
Oh, okay.
Um,
But
Here at Force for
regardless,
Thought, we support domestic violence,
yeah.
not sexual abuse.
that's where we draw the line. So yeah, it was obviously a very recent thing, and everyone was talking at the time like, oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to recast him, or are they going to pivot and just do like a different big bad? And I am super shocked that they didn't just announce a recasting because
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
they still have to tie that up. Like they scrapped.
Do they though?
They scrapped
What'll
the Kang
happen if they
Dynasty.
don't?
I don't know if anybody cared.
He's still like a very big loose thread in the
Mhm.
Loki series, which in my part is like one of the best things about.
I did not watch Loki season 2.
It's so good. The ending to Loki season 2. Spoiler for that as well, I think, because we're probably going to mention that once we get into Deadpool. It's so good, and he had like a. Did you see Quantumania? He was like a
he was
big
in
part
that a
of
lot.
that. That was
But,
like his.
So what if they never pick that up? I don't know. I mean,
Again, we've had movie like Solo in Star Wars that happens and just nothing ever comes of it. And it's like sometimes that just happens.
It is,
Yeah.
but I for some reason hold Marvel to a different standard, where I'm like, well, you guys showed it in the end credit scene, so now you have to do it, right?
I hold
But-
Marvel to a much lower standard.
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah, it should be much lower standard when you have.
But he's so important to the middle of the multiverse, and they're not pivoting away from the multiverse clearly because Deadpool and Wolverine was all about the multiverse as well.
But I think honestly, I mean, we can talk
was
about
it really though?
It is. It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best and only way to do the multiverse. And it's, to be honest, like it's such a love letter to 20th Century Fox that it was perfect because it was a multiverse that brought back characters from yesteryear. And one character that was never would never come to be. But beyond that, it's like, again, you're such low stakes when you do multiverse, when you're just like, there's different variants of Captain America and stuff too. And it's like, I like having like Falcon being the new Captain America versus like, oh, it's another Steve Rogers variant or something as well.
Yeah,
and it's like,
definitely.
that stuff is nice. That's how I think it should go. But it's like, I don't think you could. The multiverse was honestly perfected by Deadpool and Wolverine, I think. And I don't think we need to see it again.
Yeah, you can't do it any better because it's inherently goofy and
yeah.
weird, and you can't make like a compelling drama out of it. But you can make a damn good comedy.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
I kind of disagree that you can't do it better because I think Loki season 2 is very, very good. But I also really like.
I have not
Deadpool
seen
a lot.
Loki season 2.
It's so good, you guys.
We should have watched it before we recorded this. I do hear it's good.
But I haven't seen Loki season 1. So
like I said, we'll be talking more about that.
Yeah. I have very little time. I'm like, I don't want to.
There's that.
There's so many shows that they're pumping out now.
And we have to rewatch every Star Wars show every 6 months.
Yeah. This podcast is killing me.
I do also want to talk about the Fantastic Four too, because I'm very excited about that. There was a couple reveals. They showed the trailer there, and there's some leaks, so you can look at that. But in my opinion, it was nothing like crazy. I think there's some images too that you can see, but you get the general idea. It takes place in the 60s. It looks kind of goofy and campy, and I'm really excited for it. But they released the name too, Fantastic Four First Steps, which I actually really like. It's nothing like crazy. Like it's very it reminds me a lot of Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes, which is
like,
the
that's
name.
like an appropriate
it's
name,
like
right?
Doomsday, Infinity War.
Exactly. Like I was expecting like Infinity, or I was expecting like Fantastic Four and the Conquest of Galactus or something like that, right? But this is just like First Steps, and it's like, oh, that's perfect. This is their first steps into the MCU. It'll be an isolated story, and to me, that also is like, it invokes the moon landing to me, which is something that they're kind of talking about, the space race. Like you said, it takes place in the 60s, so I liked it a lot. I think it's a really good name.
I think the biggest takeaway for me that I saw, to be honest, was like Ben Grimm looks like he has the comic line brow. You see that in the image?
Oh, that's interesting. No,
because he's never really had one. He's kind of had one in the 2015 remake, but obviously Michael Chiklis was just kind of a solid rock. So he looks.
I think Michael Chiklis looked amazing in that.
Oh yeah, he did.
Movies.
But like,
I would love it if they did that again.
Having, I think it'd be too weird now.
I guess yeah,
but
they could do it better.
I think he does look. I mean, I don't know. We'll see, but maybe it is practical. But having him have like the comic line brow, I think is really cool. I was really excited to see that. But I'm really ecstatic for Fantastic Four because it feels like a movie that isn't. I mean, it's weird. Pedro Pascal is such a big movie star, but I almost feel like he is just more so in the zeitgeist than he is actually a big action star. Like, everyone knows who Pedro Pascal is. Everyone loves him. And it's like, can you name, like, things that he is in besides Mandalorian, really? Like, we can name a couple. I mean, obviously we can name Game of Thrones, but, like, and the Unbearable Weight. Huh?
The Last of Us.
But, like, I feel like there's, like, 5 things where, like, he's got the name recognition, I would say, like, that is, like, I don't say Tom Cruise, but I'm just going to say Tom Cruise. That is, like, everyone knows who that is. But it's like, why do you know who that is? And it feels so odd. He just feels like he is in the zeitgeist because he seems like such a cool guy. And I feel like for him to helm this cast as well, or like partly helming it, and then surrounding by amazing other people like Eben Moss-Backrack, who is great in The Bear. He's one of my favorites. I think he's going to be a perfect choice because he's going to play, I think, Ben Grimm great because he's
good in a Star Wars show too.
Which one?
Andor.
You did it again!
I'm gonna dig that out.
Can't help
I'm
yourself.
gonna dig it out. I'm not gonna sound stupid for a second time falling for the same
you
thing.
You can't help yourself.
I know something you don't know.
And Joseph Quinn as well from Stranger Things. And so I feel like, I'm just excited for Fantastic Four. I think the costume, it feels like they're gonna do it right. I think with this big of a cast, I don't think they could really go that wrong.
I have almost no thoughts on the Fantastic Four movie. I liked the first 2 Fantastic Four movies as well as anyone else.
Interesting. So not very.
I guess more than everyone else. I liked them. I also really liked I guess we're not certain that it's 2005, but I'm pretty sure it's 2005 was the first one. Because the video game came out right then, and I wasn't playing video games much in 2002, but I remember playing the Fantastic Four video game, and I loved it.
Max, you Google this on the laptop real quick. Just Fantastic Four when the first movie came out. I'm going to hedge my bet in like 2003.
2005 film.
Fuck. When was Silver Surfer?
Probably 2007?
Good for you, Luke.
Now you gotta type in Silver Surfer or
that came out the
this.
same year as Revenge of the Sith. What a good year for movies. My God.
Yeah, 2007.
Wow. I feel like that movie looks like shit for 2007. Also, in my mind, like Jessica Alba is like a classic, like early 2000s movie star, and I feel like technically, I guess 2007 is. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Anyway, go on, Luke.
I like those two movies, and I dislike Fant Four Stick, just like everyone else. Yeah. But I have almost no feelings about the Fantastic Four as characters in general. I mean, the Thing is just worse Hulk. Reed Richards is just worse Iron Man. Like Johnny Storm is just worse Ant-Man in my head. Like they're all just we've already done these characters in the MCU, and I'm not that excited to see him again.
I always think that the Thing is better Hulk, because to me Hulk pisses me off so bad always, where he's just like he's got the same story arc where he gets angry and he has to control his anger. He doesn't know who he is.
That's fair. I guess when I say Thing is worse Hulk, I'm always just picturing like or Marvel fight comics and they always have to put the Hulk and the Thing together because who else could fight either of them? Yeah. And while that is the closest matchup for the Hulk, it's still not close.
Yeah,
like the Thing will get thrown to the sun.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. If for nothing else, one of the problems that Marvel is having right now is that they're just running out of iconic characters.
No, they're not. They're just not using them. How long have they had the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four now? I cannot believe that it's 2024. Like, Endgame was 5 years ago, and everyone talks about like how post-Endgame, the MCU kind of dropped off. And it's because they just stopped introducing their good characters. They thought they had enough of a lead that they could take this time to introduce their C and D and F list characters, and they didn't. They're just still just sitting on all the X-Men and Fantastic Four that everyone really wants to see, and just like holding it to a gunpoint, it feels like.
I agree with that, but no, I agree with Marvel for holding off on it because they know that that's kind of like their last hurrah. I mean, Marvel has X-Men and Fantastic Four. They're releasing Fantastic Four. After that, it's X-Men, and that's it. I mean, all of their other iconic characters are gone. Iron Man is gone. Captain America's gone. Black Panther is dead. Chadwick Boseman, I mean, R.I.P. Like they're just running out of like this kind of bench of characters that they can pull from, and so I feel like I'm happy that they're taking their time, because had they come out with some sort of mutant project within the year they acquired the rights, it would have been rushed and it would have been haphazard, and they would have done disservice to whoever was in that project.
I think the thing, and this is something I want to talk about just overarchingly, honestly, in the film industry, like over the course of a couple episodes we want to plan ahead as well, is I think a lot of people they're putting these C and D list characters in and then not making them a bigger enough deal. Like you said earlier, Max, like Thanos. Thanos isn't really like the biggest Marvel comic character. Like I think Galactus is bigger than Thanos, especially like just like iconic and stuff, right? And so like, but they made Thanos iconic.
Yeah,
they made Thanos iconic for everybody, and there's a lot of that stuff that they just did not care to do. And I think
I think that's because they were trying to build up Kang, and now like when stuff started coming out, they were like, oh, we got to be able to pivot.
But even then, it just feels like they're not like for Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier, like the show. I didn't watch that, but I just feel like they were like testing the waters with what should be important next, and I don't think they really knew. I think it's the same thing overarching with Disney. They were just like, let's test the waters with a show and see if Anthony Mackie tests well. And then I feel just things like that. I think they're trying to hedge their bets, and they're trying to like make sure things work, but it's like hard to do on a global scale if you're trying to hide it in the card shuffle a little bit. Like Thanos, they were like, this is the guy, that's all we're gonna do. But then it's like the same thing where it's like, okay, well, like we're gonna, I don't know, same thing with like Wasp and stuff. She's only gonna be a side character in the Ant-Man movies, and she's not gonna be really important. She's gonna show up in Endgame, or like, I don't know, like I said, like Anthony Mackie's Falcon, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think a big part of the problem is that they introduced too many characters too fast, because they can make their C and D and E, F list characters work. Like Guardians of the Galaxy were super unknown, and that's one of their best franchises now. And people always lump Star Wars in with Marvel in this regard, when it bothers me, because Star Wars and Marvel did both release a ton of content in the last 5 years, but Marvel did it so much worse because they did like almost exclusively their C and D and E list characters. Like Hawkeye, Moon Knight, who's the girl, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, like all of their least interesting characters exclusively on TV shows and streaming. And it's like, if you miss 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these shows, it really probably doesn't matter. And they were also not that well received, which I guess isn't their fault. But in terms of just like introducing new characters, you got to really invest in a couple rather than just throw it all at the wall and see what sticks.
And the problem is they have this inverse relationship with their characters where they know that Spider-Man can draw a box office and he can make $1 billion. So they're going to make a 2-hour movie with him every 4 years. But then you have these characters that you've never heard of, like Moon Knight, and they're like, okay, and we're going to give you 6 hours of content with him. And it's like, I don't know who this is. That's a lot of time. How important is this story?
Exactly. That's the problem. It's like almost introduce Moon Knight. Like when you knew, again, expectations. You knew that they were going to make a Defender show eventually. When they were like, hey, we're going to give you Luke Cage. We're going to give you Iron Fist. Like you knew what they were building up to, and so you had those expectations. So you knew you wanted to watch each of those shows to build up to the Defenders. And I feel like a lot of those. Again, it's expectations. Show us Moon Knight in a post credits. Have him be a C character, a C line story character in a movie. So then, when you have his own show, you're introduced to him. You understand his vibe. You want to know more about him.
That's what they did with Black Panther to tremendous success.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that was a good example.
That's exactly what they should. And they should also stop killing off their characters that people like. Killmonger obviously is the biggest example, I'd say, with Michael B. Jordan in Black Panther. Just like, don't kill your guy. Like, why kill everyone off right away? Then not save anybody. Like Sinister Six it a little bit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't bother me having villains that appear and die in one movie as much as it bothers everyone else. Like, I get it, broad strokes, that it's annoying, but you should be able to create an interesting villain for every movie, and you don't need to keep the same one. Like, you have a couple.
Sure.
They tried to do it with Kang, and it's not their fault that didn't work out.
What if
But
they
I'm sure they'll do it with Doom.
The big difference between Star Wars and Marvel is limited to the characters that are already created. So when they create these villains, they are already a little bit limited by that.
Yeah.
Like another reveal from Comic-Con was Giancarlo Esposito revealed his character in the upcoming Captain America movie.
Yeah.
And he was really excited about it. And Kevin Feige was there and he was like, I'm excited to announce. And he turned to Kevin. He's like, am I allowed to say? Can I say who I'm playing? And they're like, go for it. And he was like, I'm playing the leader of the Serpent Society, Sidewinder. And the crowd went mild. Not a single person knew who that was. And it's like so awkward, but it's like, I Googled it. I was like, I've never heard of this guy. I don't know who that is. And it's it's another C-list Captain America villain that I've never heard of. And I'm like, all right, like I love Giancarlo, so I'm like, I'm sure he's gonna kill it, but I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like that doesn't excite me at all.
I would not doubt if he dies in the first 45 minutes of that movie.
I kind of thought the same thing. It was giving Crossbones vibes from Civil War.
And honestly,
Crossbones survived, or he was in
the first
The Winter Soldier,
act,
and then in Civil War,
and then he was like
But
out though.
He's more of an Easter egg.
He was in the Winter
Captain
Soldier.
America Winter Soldier, though.
He was
an Easter egg as
FBI.
Crossbones, but Frank Grillo was a major character in
True, but he wasn't
Winter Soldier.
Crossbones yet. He was just
No.
a guy.
Yeah, I guess.
But Giancarlo Esposito has a weird thing where every single time I see him, he's either like very good or very mild. Like he is really good in Breaking Bad, obviously.
How do you feel about him in The Boys?
I don't want to watch The Boys.
God damn it!
I don't like that show. It's too dark and depressing for me.
How do you feel about him in The Mandalorian?
Mandalorian is great. I love him in The Mandalorian.
agree.
I love him in Breaking Bad. But then I see him in like these weird AMC shows that like they're trying to get off the ground that like no one's ever seen before. Because I've been rewatching Mad Men, and so they have like an ad for his new show. It's like 6 episodes, and I'm just like, he looks like he does in Winter or in the new Captain America movie. I'm just like, he just looks kind of the same. He's got like Morpheus glasses on, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs. I don't know.
Interesting.
I like him though.
I don't know when that
He's
Captain
cool.
America movie comes out, but when it does, I want to do a full More for Thought episode. I guess it could be considered Force for Thought, but just about Harrison Ford, because I cannot believe that they got him
I
to
can't
be a
either.
Did you see how
major
excited
villain.
he was about it at
He
Comic-Con?
looks excited. I'm pissed.
I know. He just fucking hates Star Wars.
Why? We love you. Just like us a little.
We're trying too hard. It's like that girl in high school that you really like, but
Oh my god, it is like that.
yeah, he just we gotta give up. It's unfortunate. Gotta move on.
That said, I was really excited for Deadpool. I've actually been on a really big Marvel kick, so I've been going back and rewatching a bunch of stuff that I didn't watch the first time around because I didn't hear that great of stuff about it. So I did recently watch for the first time Eternals, which was not good.
I watched the first half of that. I thought it was fine.
That's funny that you say that. Why didn't you finish it?
I fell asleep.
Okay.
Never
I
came
didn't
back.
like Eternals
it took
as much.
I can't put my finger on why I dislike it so much, but it took me 3 sittings to watch it just because every time it did not keep my attention.
It
and
is
I'm just
long, and it's a lot of new characters.
Yes,
like they're all
yeah.
new characters, and there's a lot
Yes.
of them.
and
And
every
it's not
time
like
I'm just
a-
like, I would rather
Yeah.
be not watching this right now. I
And
wanna
every
do something
time I'm like,
else.
oh, Angelina Jolie, surely she'll be the main character. She's famous, and it's like she's pretty equal with everyone else.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I'm like, oh, I recognize
Brian
Kumail
Tyree Henry,
Nanjiani,
yeah.
and he's barely in
Yeah.
it.
That's the problems. Again, the expectations of like, who are these characters? Are they going to have any sort of impact? Are they going to meet up with the Guardians of the Galaxy or something?
Yeah. Well, then at
No.
the end of the movie, they have that giant celestial that's like halfway out of the Earth, And every project since then, people have been like, are they ever going to address that? Because that is a noteworthy thing. But apparently that's going to be a big plot point in Captain America and moving forward, because that giant celestial is made out of adamantium. And apparently that's how they're going to be introducing that into the MCU. It's interesting. I don't know, but I didn't care for the Eternals. I also finally got around to watching Love and Thunder. Also a bit of a stinker.
Yeah, it really is.
I liked that one.
Really? That one I was like, wow, they are trying so hard to be funny in every single
and
second.
there's a lot of cringe, but they stuck the landing.
Have you heard
when
Chris Hemsworth's comments on it recently? I think it might have been at no, it wouldn't have been at Comic-Con.
He was saying that like they
let
it go too far with the improv and stuff.
Yeah, he was saying like he felt bad and like he like owes it to the fans to come back as Thor because the last one was kind of a miss.
He was great in it. It's just, to me, it's Taika Waititi's directing in that movie specifically.
Yeah, it's just a tone and direction. I'm like,
I have no idea how much Chris
far.
Hemsworth is involved with that though, because like he's obviously doing a lot of improv with Taika Waititi too.
He's probably a co-producer or something on it.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. But no, the way that movie ends when they call them Love and Thunder.
Yes.
I did like that.
That
gave
me goosebumps.
That was adorable because
the
entire time you're like, oh, what does that mean? And then it's like, oh, it's fun. But then Christian Bale, like, what a wasted villain too. Like, he's so cool and
I liked him
he
too.
just shows up randomly and gives a monologue and then disappears every.
Yeah,
he was a victim to the tone of the movie because if it was a more serious movie, that would have been a much more epic of a character, I think. But I didn't really care for that. I also got around to watching She-Hulk. She-Hulk, it's not great, but I think it's very misunderstood.
I liked She-Hulk.
With that being said, audience, this is coming from a lawyer, so maybe lawyer bias.
No, the lawyer aspect of the show is atrocious. Nothing in it was portrayed accurately one bit. But it is literally a show made for 13-year-old girls. Like, it is the Marvel equivalent of iCarly or Zoe 101. And when you go into it with that mindset, it's entertaining. Like, take it for what it is. But, like, if you're a 35-year-old man watching it hoping that this is going to be, like, on par with Loki or Captain America, or what was it called? Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, you're going to be very disappointed. There's no action. There's no adventure. There's no origin story. Like, they do like a 30-minute intro that basically
with
just
Mark
like
Ruffalo
says, hey, this is
stuff
everything
too?
that happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally just a legal comedy for 13-year-old girls.
Yeah. I think that's the thing too, is again, expectations and reality. It's like people should know that who this is marketed towards. Like when you see the promos, it's different branding than anything else. Like that you're gonna see like Falcon and Winter Soldier. Again, it's just like Star Wars and MCU. It's like that's the things I don't think they wanna narrow it in just in case something is a sleeper hit and it really blows up. But realistically, I think that they should narrow the marketing of who they want these people who to watch this, because again, it's not for everybody. So something like She-Hulk, maybe it's not for us, and so then people realistically, like white males in their 30s, could shit on it all day long if they don't have that understanding of expectation, because it's not like Loki. But it's like if you just set those expectations of what this is,
maybe they did learn their lesson though, because I know their marketing for Echo was very geared toward 35-year-old males.
It was, yeah.
Did not watch that show because I am not the typical 35-year-old male demographic. I don't like my shows dark and gritty and violent. Generally,
you like Zoe 101 and iCarly.
I like She-Hulk. Yeah, but they did market that very well, from what I understand. I didn't watch the show, but from my understanding, it was accurate to the way it was marketed.
Yeah, I went into She-Hulk with the lowest of standards, and about an episode and a half into it, I was like, okay, I get what's going on, and once you do that, you can kind of enjoy it a little bit. Yeah. That said, the criticism isn't wrong. I think that just makes it unfair. I think the most fair criticism is on the business decisions behind making that show a 13-year-old girl show. But I mean, business is going to business. They're trying to expand their demographic. Like, everyone kind of sees what's happening now. Marvel has locked down pretty securely that 18 to 45-year-old white male demographic.
Yeah,
and it's like they've made billion-dollar movies, and they want to grow. They want to make $2 billion movies, and the only way to do that is to increase their audience. So I see that. I get what's happening. And yeah, when you take all that into consideration, I'm just like, yeah, I see what's going on here. She-Hulk, not for me, but I don't know. I was able to enjoy it a little bit more than I thought I was. And then I also finally got around to watching Moon Knight, which was fantastic. I recommend Moon Knight if you guys haven't seen it already.
I've heard that. I watched the first episode or two. I never kept up with it.
It's good. It's a good one to binge.
Yeah.
I'm at this point in my life, as I said, this episode, multiple episodes, we're watching Mad Men. I think at this point in my life right now, especially having like Levi, where I'm like, I want to know that there's an outcome.
You don't want to waste your time on a maybe?
Yes. Like, I'm like this point right now, like I'll change in like a year probably again. But like right now, I'm like, I just want to watch like older movies and shows that I know have a beginning, middle, and end. Like, same thing with trilogies right now. I'm just like, okay, like Deadpool and Wolverine was perfect because it's like, okay, this is going to cap off this trilogy.
Yeah.
I loved it.
In the words of Moon Knight to Admiral Holdo, tell me there's a plan, right?
Nice. Little...
This is a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, it is a Star Wars podcast.
So anyway, all that said, I was very excited for Deadpool, and I do want to
30
talk
minutes
about
in,
it.
shall we start?
Here we go now.
What's this episode about?
I want to do a quick high-level thoughts, if you have any, and a general ranking on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Matt.
I want to also thank Luke Taylor for mentioning this, because I've been wanting to go to the movies so bad. I love going to the movies, and Luke Taylor texted, instead of recording, why don't we go to the movies instead? And I absolutely said yes, and I feel like Max was so on the fence, but I barely...
Because I really wanted to record. I was like, are we going to record? But are we recording this, guys?
Yes, on the verge of having a baby, understandable. But I really had a lot of fun with this movie. Max and I talk a lot about this outside of the podcast, that movies just don't have fun anymore, and they take themselves so seriously. Deadpool's self-awareness, I think, has soured a little bit over the years since Deadpool has started. It could get a little bit annoying, but I don't care. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. This might coming off of a high. This is the first movie that I've seen brand new in the theater since I've had a baby, and so I would honestly give it an 8, because just the nostalgia factor alone, I had a lot of fun.
Wow. This is going to be one of the first times I ever rate something lower than you, I think, because I give it a 7.
It's not Star Wars.
It's not Star Wars, so I'm
welcome
rating it
this.
now on its merits as a movie, and I'm viewing it like as a movie fan first, and not as a Star Wars fan first, like I always am with Star Wars. As a movie, I'd give it a 7. It was funny. I had a really good time watching it. I probably won't ever rewatch it, but I know I won't ever rewatch it because I've been thinking a lot about it, and I like Deadpool 1 and 2 more to a lot more than Deadpool 3.
Interesting.
And I haven't rewatched either of those, so I know I'm not going to
All
rewatch
right.
this one.
That's interesting. I agree with you, Luke. I give it a 7 out of 10. I've been thinking a lot about this. It seems to me to be like a very easy movie to review in my head, because the action, the comedy, and the cameos really carried this movie, and it carried it far.
It's a vehicle driver.
I love this movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was so much fun to watch. I recommend people to see it, and if you haven't had it spoiled already, to go and pay money to see it, because it is a lot of fun. That said, I do give it a 7 out of 10, but I consider that to be a pretty good ranking. In my mind, I give a 10 out of 10 to The Dark Knight. Like, that's like the best that a superhero comic book movie can get. And then
Almost
your
a
8s
movie.
and 9s are kind of like your 9s are like the Infinity War end games, and then 8 I consider to be like Iron Man 1, Guardians 1, Avengers 1 there. So 7 out of 10 is very high. I like it a lot. I do have issues with the actual story itself, but
Because there's basically
lack
is none.
thereof.
Yeah,
Or lack
because they're
thereof.
just like, hey, I want to change this, and all of a sudden they get derailed and then derailed again, and then there's cameos, and then they get back to the thing, and there's a
And then
new
it's
villain,
over.
and then it's over.
but yet somehow it was still so much fun, because
That's
like I said, it was
exactly.
carried by
Not
so
all
much of the
movies
action
need
and
a
everything.
great story.
Exactly. That's it. It just
Fast and Furious really figured that out. They're
It's
like,
a-
guys, they do not care.
it's a movie that just needed to have fun, and I feel like it is. If you love ketchup, this is the ketchup, and who gives a fuck about the fries? This is the toppings. Like it is the vehicle to consume this. Like it is cheese sauce. Like you don't care. You just want to eat the cheese sauce. This is that.
You don't care what it's on. You're like,
Exactly.
yeah,
That
that's it.
the cameos
Give me
were
a
the
stale
vehicle.
pretzel, I'll eat it.
Exactly. No one cares that Matthew McFadden was in this movie, though he's fucking great in
Yeah.
Succession and everything too. But it's like he wasn't even the main villain at the end. Like it was so weird. But like none of that mattered to me, because again, it was just like, again, not every movie could be like this. Not every movie should be like this. Thor: Love and Thunder, prime example. But it's like, no, this movie, and some parts of the don't land for me with the jokes. They could talk about Disney and like anal jokes all day, or like different names for cocaine, and it's like, okay, let's just kind of get on with it. Like those jokes don't really land for me all the time when it's just over the top crew, because it's like, but one of the funniest jokes I've heard in literal years is, Max, I think you and I were the only two people that were dying in the theater, and I don't remember what country they talk about. But when they said, they're like, man, Denmark has like 3-day work weeks. They'll never put on a man on the moon, but man, are they happy.
Never put a man on the moon, but boy, are they happy.
That was one of the
such a good
funniest
line.
jokes
That's a good
I've heard in
joke.
literal years, because that can transcend any movie. And I literally I'm still thinking about that joke. And that was the funniest joke to me in the entire movie. And when they
I'm
do
glad that
things
you
like
brought that up. I need to remember that one.
yes,
Because I do want to say
know.
that
I don't think it was
future.
Denmark though. It was. I
I think it might have been
Was it?
Denmark. I forget.
We gotta
But
look it
yeah.
up. But that is the funniest joke to me. It was so good.
I agree 100%. I think some of the Deadpool humor is just kind of like, okay, we get it. Like, you can swear and say like grotesque things.
Yeah.
If you like that, if you like Deadpool 1 and 2, you're gonna like Deadpool 3. Like, you know what to expect.
Yeah.
It's just that, but with slightly better action, slightly better comedy, and all the best cameos.
And Hugh
so I was
Jackman.
like, yeah, it's great. And again,
And debatably the worst the best Wolverine, maybe.
The best Wolverine?
He was.
Oh, you mean because
I don't know. Like
I
when
thought you were talking about Hugh Jackman being the best Wolverine.
I mean, yeah, he's the best. Okay, the best version of a Wolverine, maybe.
But yeah,
The best version of Wolverine?
I don't know. I loved it. The redemption arc felt like very much like X-Men, the animated series comic Wolverine.
I thought the
where he's
redemption
very
arc felt
gruffly-
so flat.
Really?
I thought, yeah.
Oh no, so I don't.
well, let's hold on real
Yeah.
quick. Let's talk about that first because I do want to talk about the cameos first.
Oh, let's do that.
Again, major spoilers, but I do want to talk about the Wolverine cameos because there is a montage where Deadpool's
Yes.
trying to recruit Wolverine, and he goes through all these different variants, and you see so many hilarious references. Right, we got the comic accurate Wolverine where he's like 4'6" or something like that. That was so funny to see on screen. We got to see the Cavalrine, Henry Cavill as Wolverine because there was rumors that he was going to play him. I thought that was hilarious. There was a couple like iconic comic book
The
art
80s,
Wolverines that were like recreated, like when he's crucified on the X and he's just like, whoa, I don't know what's going on
With
here,
all the
but I'm
skulls
outta
and
here.
stuff.
Yeah.
I loved when he's like the '80s one where the shadow is on the brick wall and stuff. I love that they recreated that like cover and everything too. I thought that was right. He has like that huge mane of hair.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, I thought a lot. I know the Wolverine cameo sequence gets a lot of praise, or I've seen it so far at least. I thought they were very hit or miss personally. I liked him, the short Wolverine one, but because he told funny jokes after they introduced short Wolverine. Like the joke wasn't just that short Wolverine is in this, it's short Wolverine is in this and then here's some jokes. But a lot of them, like the one that is crucified, like you have to know that that's a comic thing. Otherwise, it's just kind of weird and tonally inconsistent. And the Cavalrine one is like, you're not telling a joke or anything. It's just that Henry Cavill is here, and apparently people wanted him to be Wolverine, which I didn't particularly know.
The joke was when he said, "Oh, this just feels so right. We're gonna treat you so much better than those fuckers down the street."
Also,
I thought that was really funny.
So are you feeling like how every other fan felt about Ahsoka not having any sort of context? The show.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'm feeling
You
like how I would
are.
imagine
You are,
those
yes.
people feel. Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
All right. Because I understand. I think there's a 0.5 second like understanding of like, oh, these are comic characters. Even there's so many things, like I said, the Thanos, you just don't know, right? And it's like I think you can even Google those.
Or like the
references later.
2-second Hulk cameo when you see the Wolverine in his original uniform and he's like, oh, nice, whatever year it was, classic John Byrne.
Yep.
And then you see the Hulk there. That's
yellow
because
and brown.
the Wolverine's first appearance was in Hulk 181 and he fights the Hulk. And so I was like, oh, I get that reference. That's so funny.
And he's like slimmed down. I feel like they CGI'd Hugh Jackman's body or something because he looks like skinnier in that specific scene.
Interesting. I didn't notice that.
I didn't.
But
notice
all of
that
these
either.
are like blink and you miss it type things.
Yes.
But there were one after another, and I really liked all of those a lot. But Wolverine is obviously in the movie. He's one of the titular characters, so saying that's a cameo might not be entirely accurate. But I do want to talk about some of the other cameos, starting with what I thought was the best one, and that is
I have a different opinion.
Really the
Me
Human
too.
Torch. When I first saw him and I heard his voice, I was like, oh, that's Chris Evans. This is going to be Captain America. And in my head, I'm like, wow, they're bringing back Captain America already. I understand like this is a variant or whatever, but I was like, I don't like this. And then they just absolutely pulled the rug out from underneath me in the best way.
Yep.
When he was so excited, he jumped down, he nailed the superhero
flame
landing,
on.
and he's like, oh, he's going to say it. And then he said Avengers. And then he yells flame on, obviously, and he's the Human
Yep.
Torch. I thought that was so funny, and from that point on I was like, okay, I see where this movie's going. I love this is great.
I love when they fight in front of the 20th Century Fox logo because that's just not a company anymore. Like that again, this movie is just such a part of me just loves it because it is just a love letter to those early 2000s movies when we were kids. I absolutely loved it. I mean, same thing with Hugh Jackman. It's just like, 2000, we've been with him as Wolverine, like, through thick and thin. You have, like, Origins of Wolverine, obviously a low point for anybody. Even the movie's still fun. Fuck you guys. X-Men is just great. Days of Future Past, maybe the peak, definitely the peak. But then can I talk about my favorite cameo?
Yeah.
And it's not in order on this list, but my jaw fucking dropped when I saw Wesley Snipes come on screen.
Yeah. That was my second. That's a close one. Maybe third.
Blade, for me and my brothers, were such a rite of passage growing up watching that like every weekend. Blade 2, and then Blade Trinity, not so much. But one of the funniest jokes in the whole movie, to me, again, besides the Denmark potential joke, was when he's like, I don't think I like you. And then Deadpool's like, yeah, you never really did. It's like, yeah, I completely forgot Ryan Reynolds is in Blade Trinity. And it's like,
I didn't even know that. I didn't get that joke. And I think you were the only one who laughed at that in the theaters.
oh my God.
I knew I missed something there.
I died. And so like me and our neighbors, and we used to always watch Blade. And the fact that like Wesley Snipes was out of the game for so long, tax evasion, and then just And then
allegedly,
and then the whole Blade remake is like not going well. They've had 3 directors drop out. They've had, Mahershala Ali's supposedly trying to get out of his contract or whatever.
I mean, he's got to be 50 now. That was announced like almost 10 years ago.
It was forever ago, and so it's been in kind of production hell. And so to see like Wesley Snipes' Blade was like, oh my god, and like to kind of send him off like that was fucking great. And then there's obviously another cameo, but
I'm
I'll
glad you
yield my
guys
time.
talked about those 2 first because I did not care for either of those cameos. I didn't really love any of the cameos to me. I mean, I didn't dislike them. The Human Torch one I saw from a mile away. Like I knew.
Same.
You thought you knew that was Human Torch?
As soon as Chris Evans showed up,
that's so disappointing.
Because I've seen this joke 100 times on Reddit. Like, wouldn't it be funny if they did this?
The blue is different too. The blue is Fantastic Four blue when he puts his arm out. I was like, bullshit. There's no way that is the Captain America.
Also, it's not necessarily that this was indicative, but
wait, so did you see it coming?
Yes, when he stuck his arm out.
Oh, guys, if you didn't see it coming, that is like the best joke in the entire movie.
Yes. And it's not that this was a indicator for me, but I also noticed that Chris Evans is no longer in Captain America shape. Like he's not out of shape, but he's not
a
eating
thin boy.
100 grams of protein and working out
Yes.
6 times a day anymore.
Yeah.
Which good for him. He gave us 8 years of his life. He deserves to do whatever he wants now.
He's not bulked. He's like Jesus on the cross then.
Yeah. So that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny, but I knew it was coming. And then the Blade one, I have not seen Blade, and I didn't care at all about it.
You should.
And I did not know that he was so well liked because in our audience, like we saw it in a fairly packed house, but Elektra comes out first, and everyone was like, "Hey, Elektra," and no one cared because no one really liked the Elektra movie.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt also. And then Blade came out, and everyone went nuts. And I was like,
because it's
really?
like
I have
tax
very similar
evasion.
feelings.
Everyone likes an underdog.
The Elektra cameo joke too was like, "Oh, we lost our Daredevil," and she's like, "That's okay," because like her and Ben Affleck are divorced in real life. That was hilarious.
Fuck, I didn't even catch that joke.
Oh yeah,
That's
I
funny.
didn't catch that.
There's
either.
so many jokes that I think that was, obviously they reference a lot of things like the Canada line, "Get your fucking my country out of your mouth" is like, okay, that's not gonna age well, and the slap is not on no one's mind again from Will Smith, and so I don't know, like things like that. But there's a lot of like jokes I feel like with like around culture that aren't gonna age very well.
That's how I always feel because I
Yeah.
never get the pop culture jokes as much as you do.
So
But,
which one was your favorite cameo? Was it neither of those two?
I mean, looking at all these, I guess Happy Hogan, but I wouldn't even consider him a cameo as much because he was just like more like a character.
I'm glad someone liked it.
Me too.
I mean, I didn't care
It
about
served
X,
its purpose, but
I didn't care about X-23 because that felt out of place, to be honest. That's not like, oh, this is a
You think
legacy
so?
character. Like, she was a main character.
But she's
and-
older now.
I know, but that's like the closest I think they came to actually disgracing Logan's legacy, which I typically don't care about, but I know so many other people do a lot, and I thought that was odd that they would include her in this joke of a movie.
no, I feel like that
I
was such an important
disagree,
part
yeah.
to the heart of the film when
I
she said,
agree.
"You let me grow up and you let other kids grow
Yeah.
up too." And I was like, "Oh, because he saved her and he saved the other kids." But
Yeah,
then
but
part
it
of me
wasn't
was like,
him.
"I was a kid when I watched these movies, and I agree. I
Yeah.
grew up with you, X-Men."
Exactly.
Not Logan.
Especially him. But then at the same time, at the end, it's a happy ending where she gets to spend time now with Logan, the other version of Logan.
But
the
it's not
person-
him, and this guy is kind of a dick. Which
not-
the other Logan.
No,
well,
not
he
anymore.
was-
That's the redemption arc.
Yeah, I don't know. None of that really landed for me.
Damn.
X-23 is also arguably not a cameo too because they had a trailer spot release before the movie came
Like
out
right
that showed
before.
her.
That was
people were
lame.
disappointed by
Yeah.
that, but I was like,
I loved when she put her sunglasses on. That was cool.
yes, that was a good touch. When she did that, I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, I get that."
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the best I mean, I like the Blade, but Gambit.
Top three.
I mean,
yeah, that was exciting.
we've been waiting to see that forever. I
also
personally
didn't care
don't.
about
What?
Gambit.
That's insane. As somebody who has loved X-Men the animated series, that is like
that's why I don't watch
the cool
that show.
Everyone wants to be Gambit. I know I'm a Cyclops in my heart, but I want to be a Gambit. But like Gambit, I like his costume. I mean, I could do without the Cajun accent. That was one of the biggest things. I don't know if you guys remember where.
Cajun? I thought it was a French accent.
No, he's a Louisiana
Cajun
guy.
is kind of French, but-
That's true. The French Quarter. But he one of the biggest jokes again culturally was like when Channing Tatum was announced as Gambit, which I think is a sus casting. He did great in this. I think
This is a joke, though.
it is, but he was going to be the guy. But the big thing was like, yeah, he just can't get his accent down. And that was one of the funniest things. Where it was like, who is your dialect coach?
Deadpool's a timeout. Who was your dialect coach?
Oh,
yeah,
I love
I loved seeing it because I too always wanted to see Gambit in the live action. I thought that was going to be a great casting.
Yes. Oh.
But this really just solidified the fact that Gambit is going to be a hard character to nail in live action.
You gotta do the costume.
accent
Yeah.
is
Oh.
hard
Yeah.
alone.
Yes.
Also, his superpowers require a lot of CGI. So I'm like, I'm wondering how much of
Yeah.
that's just like financial issues as well, where they're like, you can't do anything without CGIing it.
Yeah.
And then
literally
also
anything.
his costume.
Please, Iron Man led the MCU for 12 years. That's not a concern.
No, but in a couple first films, though, it was mostly a practical suit.
No, it was not. In the first
They
movie,
made suits for it.
no, the Jon Favreau has talked about in the first movie how he wanted to do it practical, and then they showed it to him digital, and he was like, "Okay, never mind. We don't need to do it practical. This looks as good as I need it to look."
He's got the shoulder pads on. He looks like a football player, but like nothing else.
Yeah, it's almost entirely CG since Iron Man 1.
Oh, I thought it started as more practical.
And even if it wasn't, it's 2024. That's not stopping Disney from making a movie.
Yes, it is. Have you seen their practical effects or digital effects CGI lately?
I was gonna say the effects in this movie ruled. I feel like they specifically.
Yeah, they look good in this one.
There's a couple moments where I'm like, wow, they actually really did a good job here. There was nothing that I thought was out of place. The Human Torch looked great when he went out. Like when he, again, you're obviously biased and you're like kind of pay attention to that. Oh my God, it's Chris Evans's the Human Torch again. But I was like, everything looks really cool in this entire movie. And I feel like they specifically upped the budget or made correct decisions because I feel like it really maybe it's because it's the third movie in a trilogy versus like the first kind of throwaway movie.
Yeah.
But Gambit was the suit is hard, right? I was a little disappointed that there wasn't any sort of like purple in his hair or something, just like how they do the shell shading in the cartoon. But I really liked the costume. I thought it was cool. I think if you were gonna do a Gambit movie, you would have to modify the costume a little bit so he can move around a little bit.
I'm just like looking at his headpiece and I'm like, what is that though that you're wearing?
Could he not move his neck? He was back. Did they make a joke about that
They
too?
did, yeah. I loved his coat though. His coat was awesome.
I mean, if you're going to a con, that's who you're going to want to cosplay as, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
As someone that has never seen anything with Gambit other than X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he was fine in that too. I have no feelings for him in this cameo. Very much like Blade, everyone was really excited, and I was just kind of left out, which made me sad.
Well, the last cameo that I had to talk about were any of the X-Men villains, but I didn't really have a whole lot to say about them. I thought it was cool to see some of them again, but I didn't.
Pyro,
kind of like
Toad.
you, I didn't have any attachments to any of them.
Sabretooth, no, one of the best action figures of 2000. So cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Like I liked it, but I wasn't like
Instantly
freaking out
we
in
saw
my seat.
Speaking of, we're talking about what is the star. Well, how? Okay, full disclosure, audience. Before we're trying to figure out a joke, and we're like, is there any Star Wars overlap? But then we obviously were like Jon Favreau. Why we could also done Ray Park as well, who played Toad.
Oh yeah, we talked about that, but
Barely,
that's a
I
minor
forgot
role.
to check the status. Or he didn't have a speaking line, so he probably wasn't credited, was he?
Yeah, he's in it.
He was. It was Ray Park.
That's what it's on IMDb. Is that
Nice.
under everything? So
That kind of surprises me, but I like that. I'm happy.
That's a very minor role in Deadpool and Wolverine, though.
like very minor. He's in like 2 shots.
That's why I didn't care about any of the X-Men villains. Like Pyro was the only one that was actually a character that had like dialogue, and he was a kid in 2006 when X-Men Last Stand came out,
yeah.
and so he's 18 years older now, and I don't recognize him at all. It's like
Right, he looks exactly the same.
You think?
Yes.
He had a beard and stuff. He
He has
was
this
he was
douchey
an
slick
adult.
back hair.
We
He
had-
looks like he went through like a meth phase, and that's it.
we had to talk about
That
that though.
changes a man.
We had to talk about that though when we got out of the theater because we all kind of looked at each other and I feel like we were like, I'm assuming that was the same actor.
Yes.
Was that the same
No,
actor?
I
That's
was like,
what I
yes, that
said.
is.
Matt
Yeah.
knew.
No, I was with you. I didn't know. I was like,
You don't
I assume
remember-
it is, but I don't know.
Even when they're in the farmhouse and X-Men Last Stand, and I can't remember his name, but Iceman's the good one, and then Pyro's flicking the lighter.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Remember
then you
when
should
they
know
go
it's the
to
same guy. Is it X2?
someone's house and then he starts throwing fireballs at the cops and stuff.
And you're not like, oh, he's got the same.
And his parents try to tell him to pray the mutants away.
What a time.
But no, that was X2 because Pyro goes with Magneto at the end of that one, and he's a bad guy for all of X3. But he was 18 years younger, and he's probably like 40 now, so he was definitely a kid then. I did not recognize him at all. I trusted the movie that they got the same guy because what's he up to?
And
I
Azrael,
know because they went such out of their way to show everyone else. I was like, I'm sure that's the same guy, but I don't know.
Azrael from X-Men First Class.
Azazel?
Azazel, thank you. And
I was excited to
Colossus
see
from
him.
what? What was Colossus from?
Colossus.
He was in the other Deadpool movies. What do you mean?
Was he?
You don't mean
No, the
Colossus.
Colossus in this
Juggernaut.
Juggernaut. Thank you.
Oh,
the Juggernaut.
Juggernaut
in
from
that,
X3.
Yeah.
Was he? Was
Yeah, because I was
X3?
really
Yeah.
hoping he was going to say, "Don't you know who I am?" And then they were going to like behead him right then and there or something. That would have been funny.
That's
Oh,
not
that
the same
would've
guy
been funny.
though.
Is it?
That's not the
That's
same
not
actor?
that one.
No, that's not the same actor.
That's X3.
That's the Juggernaut.
interesting. No, that's not the same guy.
That's the same costume, unless
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
different
That's what I was
actor.
wondering. Yeah, it's a different actor.
Um,
I'm 90% sure it's different because who's
That's so funny that they got all these different X-Men back, but the one or X-Men villains back. But
I could be wrong,
because the one character that they actually needed for plot purposes, they couldn't get that actor.
The guy is from in the X-Factor show The Strand, like a very distinct guy. I don't think that's him.
I have
I
no
wouldn't be
idea.
surprised if they recast it because he was also shirtless and he was ripped. So I wonder if they were like, you know what, it'll just be easier to get someone who actually looks like this.
Would not. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
But yeah, I loved all the cameos. We already talked a lot about the action and the humor. There was a couple more jokes that I wanted to talk about just because I really liked them a lot. Starting with the opening sequence when he's killing all these people to Bye 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 by NSYNC.
That was by far my
With
favorite
Logan's
part.
body?
With Logan's carcass. Yeah, that was so funny.
It is great when they're like, I wonder, you're probably wondering how we're gonna do this movie without desecrating Logan, and it's like, we're not. And that is a good
And then he
way to do
literally
it.
desecrates the grave.
Yes, yeah. I love one of my favorite jokes in the movies was like, I'm no scientist, but you seem dead. Like sitting next to a skeleton.
Because he's doing this whole thing with, he's like, that's not how regenerative bodies work or whatever. And he was like saying like how he has to be alive. That he's like, he's dead. So I really like
downtown South Dakota or downtown North Dakota. That was funny too.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the part where he was talking to Wolverine. Deadpool was talking to Wolverine, and he said, "Welcome to the MCU. You're joining at a bit of a low point."
Yep.
That was like the most meta thing to me that I died laughing at because I'm like, I'm glad that they're self-aware. And I saw interviews since where they were interviewing Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds, and they asked like, was there any jokes that you were surprised made the cut? And they gave like the obligatory like, yeah, all of them, were vulgar, but that one was Sean Levy's. He was like, yeah, Ryan and I, when we were showing Kevin this film for the first time, we were like really holding our breath at that joke. And luckily Kevin died laughing as soon as he heard it. And we were like, okay, if it's funny, it works. But I'm glad that they have that self-awareness because this is a big low point for the MCU. They've been doing miss after miss after miss, which they literally say in the film. And I just thought that was so funny. And I'm glad that they pointed it out. We'll talk about the story in a minute, but even though they point out that this is a low point and that they've been doing the same thing over and over again, they still did the exact same thing over and over again in this movie too, which is why the story was kind of lacking, but I really like that joke.
Me too.
But that's the kind of witty, self-referential humor you get from Deadpool. When we saw the Ant-Man, Giant Man, whatever you want to call him, carcass, and Deadpool said, "Oh, looks like Paul Rudd finally aged."
Yep.
That was funny. I like that one a lot.
A lot of cultural jokes. Then in 20 years, people are like, "Who the fuck is Paul Rudd?" Like, or like, "That's Ant-Man. What else is he in?"
I know.
Oh,
And you
Friends?
gotta remember that this movie came out at this exact time in the MCU, where it's like 5 years after Endgame, before hopefully any of the good movies came out besides Spider-Man.
Exactly.
And then it's not that funny of a joke. It's actually quite blasphemous, but he kept calling himself Marvel Jesus. Lord, I rebuke this. However, I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was very funny how they made a big deal in Deadpool, how he was like, "I'm Marvel Jesus." And then literally the next day, they're like, "We're bringing back Robert Downey Jr."
Yeah, that is
so I'm like,
funny.
"Oh, Robert Downey Jr. is Marvel Jesus."
Yeah. I didn't love the Marvel Jesus joke because again, it's too self-aware of being a Marvel movie. It was like, I don't know. It felt weird.
Yeah, that landed for me.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I didn't care. I just thought it was funnier in real life that they're
That
like,
is funnier in real life.
Robert Downey Jr. is the Marvel Jesus. But that does bring us to the story, which I do want to talk about. And I purposefully wanted to front load this conversation with all of the pros because what was that story? I like it was just another multiverse story. They wanted to end his timeline because Logan died, even though that's completely contradictory to Loki season 2, which ends, spoiler alert, with Loki literally sitting at the middle of the multiverse, holding it all together. So it's like the multiverse can't exist. Like we don't need to get rid of all these other universes, but there's like some rogue factions in the TVA apparently that want to do it anyway. And I'm like, how does this fit in with Loki now? And that's part of the problem with all the Marvel content is it's like it's too much too fast. And I feel like some of it is not gelling with the other stuff.
Well,
like,
this
seems inconsistent.
Take place before like Loki season 2?
That's
like,
what I was wondering the entire time. I was like, I don't know. Ironically enough, that show takes place outside of time because it's in the multiverse and time is irrelevant there. And I
like in the story, it doesn't really matter because it's super simple in the fact that there's a rogue faction with a TVA and that the fact that one person kind of is the anchor point, right? And Logan was that anchor point, and ever since he passed away, it's been slowly kind of going. It's a
great premise for this movie, and they just dropped it after the first act.
Honestly, I don't think you need to pick it back up. It's like that's the anchor point. He's trying to save his world. That's all you need. And Deadpool just wants to be a hero after being rejected. I don't think you need much more. Like think about the movie Jingle All the Way. They were just like,
Why?
because that is a simple that is a simple movie story plot that works. Man
Get
needs
toy.
That's all you need to know. And it's like, you don't think about, I mean, that's a different kind of movie, but it's like, that story works because he doesn't bring it up multiple times. I think that's a lot of the MCU movies start failing because they try to overstuff it or try to pack an emotion. Like with like Miss Marvel and stuff too, they try to pack an emotion. You're like, I just don't care. Like, you're trying to make me like, see, honestly, The Acolyte, when they're just like, well, come on. When you're just like, why are they holding hands at the end? Care about these characters. Care about this. And it's like, no.
Did you hear Leslie Headland originally wanted them to kiss, but they thought that
Yes.
they weren't there yet?
Yes.
That was accurate. We were not there yet.
Yeah, I'm glad. Even the holding hands was like...
The holding hands was weird. Yeah.
It was.
I'm surprised they're standing that close to each other, to be honest, by the end of that show.
Going to Jingle All the Way is just the beginning
Yes.
of Matt's pitch to try to get Sinbad recast as Kang.
That's all we need to do.
The Marvel Universe is saved.
Yes.
But yeah, it was, you know, when we talk about like Superman and giving somebody God powers as a superpower, it doesn't work because every single time you're just like, well, couldn't they have just done this? And the same thing is true with time travel and multiverses and unlimited possibilities. Every single thing, it's like, you can't think it that far through, and like, you just got to accept some things for what it is. Like, it's not going to make perfect logical sense because it's time travel and multiverse. Like, yeah, it is what it is. And I don't like that. But
I did not like Cassandra Nova. The idea of a bad Professor X is interesting, but this was not.
Yeah, she was kind of a throwaway. Because, I mean, you're like, she's bad for them for a little bit, and then she ends up being the real villain. Again,
I thought she was a good one-off, though. I feel like they did it justice, but I mean, the movie
Again,
was
fine.
not...
Made
Even
her-
though there were like two protagonists or antagonists, it really
Yeah.
wasn't about either of them. Like, it was
No.
still about Wolverine and Deadpool. Like, that was kind of like the heart of it, right? I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine fight each other 2 times, and they fight all of the Deadpool variants, and like, that's most of it. Like, the main bad guy, Casanova, she was kind of a small part. Paradox was more of a plot point than a villain.
yeah. And a cooler name, to be honest. Paradox is an awesome name.
Yeah.
I didn't love that. I didn't love how many just fight scenes in general.
There
But,
were
like,
a lot.
There was just one after another, and especially in terms like bird's eye view, because they're mostly the only good parts. It's like there's the long fight with Logan and Wolverine and Logan and Deadpool in the beginning, and then there's the long fight where they fight all of Cassandra Nova's people, and then they fight each other in the minivan, and then they fight all the Deadpools, and like each of those sequences is pretty similar. Like, Deadpool is an interesting character, but he's just stabbing people and sometimes shooting them, and every time it was very like it was the same style. Like, it was always over song from the late 90s or early 2000s,
Yes.
and it was the same like fight style where it would go slow motion sometimes just to see something extra gory, and then it would go fast, and I don't know.
I don't know,
I could have done without maybe one of those fight scenes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, I feel like it's the first one because I thought that the fight in the minivan was funny and different enough to keep my
Yes.
interest the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked that one.
Yeah, I
'Cause
agree.
When he says people have been waiting forever for this, and then they just kind of
And
fight.
he's like, let's give the people what they want.
Yeah.
I was like, is this really what I
Yeah,
want?
no, I was like, I'd rather see Wolverine fight Sabretooth.
Yeah.
And then they did, and it was over in 2 seconds.
Yes,
You're
I was like, I would
okay.
have switched those. Maybe not, Deadpool dying, but I would have switched those for sure.
Yeah.
Because I love the Wolverine and Sabretooth story. Yeah, I don't.
But yeah, the lack of emotion/heart in this movie really bothered me, especially because Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 had such an emotional heart to it, and it made me really like those movies. Whereas this one, it did the same thing as Iron Man in Civil War, which pissed me off also. And I wonder if it's like a higher up at Marvel thinks it's a good idea, where you want your main character to be in a different headspace from the last movie, so they have their girlfriend break up with them off screen just to get back together with them later with no real nothing changing.
Yeah.
But not only did that happen in Deadpool 3, but in Deadpool 2, his girlfriend dies. And she like dead. And the whole movie is about her being dead.
Doesn't she come back at the end?
No, she's in like the yellow tinted heaven, and she's like, all right, you have to go back to your F word now. And I that's what I was just rewatching in the driveway on the way here, because I was thinking about it, and I was like, I thought she died. And I rewatched the end of Deadpool 2, and she dies, and she leaves, and he says, don't fuck Elvis in heaven, and she says, don't fuck Colossus. And then he goes back to Earth or wherever, and she's dead.
No, because she gets Cable's teleporter thing or whatever, and then he's able to use that because in the end credits he goes to all the different universes because he kills Deadpool at the end of Wolverine
I
Legends.
did not watch the end credits. Is that what happens?
Isn't it?
It kind of pulls the rug out of the emotional impact of Deadpool 2 then.
You see, now I got to go back and rewatch it too because I guess I don't know that.
You should, because Deadpool 2 was great.
But I had
a lot better than this movie.
I had the similar critique though about, I guess, just kind of like the heart and the emotion behind it. Like he just wants to prove that he's a world-saving superhero to his girlfriend, and Wolverine is just looking for redemption because apparently in his universe everyone died and it was kind of his fault.
I'm not okay.
They could have delved into that more.
Think about.
I agree. That was the one that I was more interested in.
Think about Jingle All the Way 2. No,
The Return of Sinbad.
I think I really honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I don't give a shit about Deadpool. I like Wolverine. I like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. To me, that was the emotion of our childhood, to be honest. That's where the emotion is for me. I think that's where the emotion is for a lot of people. And that is a lot to rely on in the movie. The movie basically not, I don't give a shit that all the X-Men are dead. We didn't see it. We didn't see that. I like the fact that
I agree. And similarly, I don't give a shit about this Wolverine because we've never seen his character.
See, I think for me, this is like basically the Wolverine from the X-Men, the animated series. Like it is, right? Did you watch? I don't know if
X-97?
I don't know. I haven't watched 97. Like
it's so good,
one, but the animated. When I say I'll say 97 when I mean 97.
Dude, the real 97.
The real one. The real one.
The one from 97?
Yes.
The X-Men 97 prequel.
Yes. But like to me, that is this Wolverine. I mean, is he not exactly the same? Basically, like to me, this is basically that.
He's got
Wolverine.
the same costume, but that would be
same
sad
costume.
if
dark and brooding.
everyone died. And it
No,
was his
I don't
fault.
mean it's like the actual like it's going to continue from 97. I have not watched that again, but like to me, that is like to me, I know this Wolverine variant already.
That's fair. I did not feel that way.
Having that backstory. Like, he is consistent. I mean, literally, I feel like in every other episode of X-Men, the animated series, Wolverine leaves because he's, like, pissed off at them and he wants to marry Jean, but she's with Cyclops and blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like all that stuff happens. I mean, he made a joke about seeing Gambit, I think, as well. And it's the same thing where it's like, didn't he say something about when Gambit? I was too pumped to accept.
Yeah, I think
but I'm pretty sure
right.
because like he knows who Gambit is. So in my mind, I already know who this Wolverine is, and to me, it's like that emotion of like Hugh Jackman presumably playing Wolverine one last time, even though they joke about it until he's gonna be 97 or whatever. But to me, I liked that version of Wolverine.
It's also hard now because every single time we see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, it's being like advertised as like his last hurrah, right? And it's hard comparing this to his last one, which was Logan, which I felt like was a very successful, like emotional movie and a good send off to him and everything. This one, like as a last hurrah, it's like, oh, it was fun seeing him again, but it wasn't like a good send off, if that makes sense.
It's such a weird thing, but to me, it was just because I've been dying to see him in that suit since.
That's true. That was very satisfying.
Yes, as somebody who went and watched the animated series in real time back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that is the X-Men. And then X-Men, the movie came out in 2000. You know, he makes a joke about spandex, and he's just in the black leather suit with the orange stitching. And you're like, okay, maybe it's gonna be next time. And then he's just in a white tank top the entire time. It's like, to me, this is the Wolverine I've been waiting to see for over 24 years. You know, so for me, it's not even like Logan is a better send off, but for me, I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to see this entire time. That's all I wanted.
I have
and then I gasped when he put the mask on. I haven't watched any of the Deadpool Wolverine trailers at all, so I don't know if that's in the trailers or anything. I assumed he might have. The popcorn buckets were there, but when he put that on, literal gasp for me was like,
I agree. For some reason, I didn't see it coming, and it did, and I was like, oh, it looks so cool.
Yes, it looks so cool. So that's to me I've just been waiting for that moment forever.
That's crazy. I think this is how people feel when I talk to them about Star Wars that aren't big Star Wars fans, because I did not care at all about that. I thought it looked a little goofy. Like, I know that's his cowl from the comics and the show, but I did not think that translated well to live action. Something about it, if it was like too digital or too practical.
The eyes were a little weird.
Or just the eyes.
Yeah, I think because with seeing the eyes plus a real jaw versus Deadpool's just, you know, whatever.
That's it.
There was
that might be
it was a little funky, but I don't give a shit. I'll go to my grave thinking it was cool.
There's two
I'm happy for you.
Two things that Kevin Feige said that I want to talk about. One of them was he talked about the original X-Men movie, how they were all in black leather.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, that was like shortly after The Matrix came out, and everyone liked that movie, so everyone thought it would be a good idea to put them in black leather. I'm like, that was your logic?
That is so
That's what
funny.
people were thinking in the early 2000s? That's so stupid.
If they waited 2 more years and the Matrix sequels came out and nobody cared about them, they'd be like,
Let's just do the uniforms. Who cares? But then the other thing Kevin Feige said, Now, again, he's the executive producer. He needs to hype up everything that comes out, but he was really making this sound like it was going to be very impactful to the MCU moving forward. He said,
What?
Yes, I'm glad we're going to talk about this. I saw this comment also.
Good. He said if Endgame was, or if he said if I can't speak, if Infinity War was a 9 and Endgame was a 10 in terms of impact to the universe, Deadpool and Wolverine is an 8. And that is just objectively wrong.
No, it's a 0 to 1.
Nothing happened. I mean, he saved the Fox universe. Like, they could come back and make another X-Men movie now, not in the MCU. It still exists. Like, I was going into this thinking, like, okay, this universe is going to, like, finally die somehow, and Deadpool is going to be the last remaining one, and he's going to somehow jump ship and join the MCU proper, Earth 616, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. I mean, he saved that universe, and
now he's going to live there.
they're good. Yeah,
with
he's still
Wolverine
there.
From a different universe also, but it doesn't matter. It had literally nothing to do with the MCU universe.
Literally nothing. And the only thing I can think of why I would give it like a 1 out of 10 for impact to the universe is because of the Happy Hogan cameo. And I'm like, all right, the Avengers knows of Deadpool, so in a future movie, if they're like, oh, we need one more guy to help round out this team, Happy could be like, I know a guy, and then go and recruit Deadpool. But I'm like, that. Other than that, this was a really isolated standalone movie. You do not need to watch this to watch anything that comes after.
Potentially. We don't know, but yeah, that's why I enjoy this movie, was that it had no significant impact at all.
I enjoy it because it was funny. But I know a lot of people, or I've seen a lot of people say on Reddit and etc. that, and you said the same thing, that it's like a love letter to the Fox superhero universe. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly, because if you take out the behind the scenes montage during the credits, which was emotional and that felt like a send off, none of the characters are in this. If this was actually to be a send off to the Fox universe, they would have had the X-Men, either the Halle Berry, Patrick Stewart era, or the other one, McAvoy and Fassbender. Any of those characters be in this, and because they're not, I'm certain it's because they're going to be.
Well, no, because we had a send off with 8 Days of Future Past. We don't need another send-off for them. I think this is about the unsung heroes. Gambit never got his moment.
Well, that might have been a send-off for the first generation.
Elektra was underrated,
Elektra
and she
definitely never had her moment.
She got screwed. Blade, the same thing. There's always the rumors of Blade 4, and that never happened either. I feel like these are all the.
So it was a good send-off for Blade and Elektra then, but.
And same thing with Gambit. He's never.
Gambit, but he's not even in the Fox universe. Well, it was not a send off for the Fantastic Four or.
Yeah, it was. Johnny Storm was there. This is the
getting his skin ripped from his bones is what he always wanted.
This was the send off for all the shitty movies. That's the thing, is like, no one likes Elektra. The Blade movies are okay at best. It's just nostalgia. Like, I love the first one. So this is just this isn't like it's not taking itself seriously at all. Like, I think this would be a total waste to send off the X-Men in the fact of Patrick Stewart. Like, Patrick Stewart can be in this movie. Like, this knows what it is. Like, it is. They make fun of Gambit openly and how Channing Tatum couldn't play him. Like, this is a send off to the lesser known, to the deadbeats, the D class movies that we never will rewatch, like Elektra.
I agree with that, but then I think that they did it unfairly, because if it's supposed to be a send off just to them and not the X-Men, that was what I wanted. The part of the Fox universe that I thought was good. The behind the scenes credit scene to Time of Your Life was 95% X-Men.
Yeah, it was.
So they really wanted to have their cake and eat it too, and get us to think about X-Men without actually showing any of them.
It was just Hugh Jackman. That was the draw there. It was just Hugh Jackman and X-Men, and most of it was just Hugh Jackman centered, besides a couple Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen moments.
I guess I can't remember it specifically, but I remember thinking that we were going to see a lot of behind the scenes stuff from Fantastic Four and Daredevil or Elektra, and there was some. And there was even a couple bits from Fant Four Stick.
Yeah,
there was.
They threw that one in there.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it's dead, guys.
It's dead.
I think calling it a send-off is inaccurate. I agree with Matt with how you were describing it as a love letter. I think that is the best way of thinking of it. It's a love letter to those movies, but
just the bad ones.
Yes,
not X-Men.
Yeah, just the bad ones.
and Hugh Jackman. Because again, Days of Future Past did that. I think it is.
Well, then make a love letter to the Dark Phoenix era. But
Dark Phoenix is terrible.
I mean, I liked it, but those characters, Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy, they were fantastic.
They were, yeah, but I think that series should have ended with Days of Future Past. It was First Class and Days of Future Past were two of the best X-Men movies, and I don't.
That's just Yeah, those are good. And
Yeah.
the sequels were.
And then it's like Apocalypse is like, well, that was a huge step down. The Dark Phoenix was just, I feel like a kick in the sack. Because
I forget about Dark Phoenix constantly.
I
Like,
also
that was bad.
just hate the Dark Phoenix storyline. And again, that's the same thing with Doctor Doom. I'm glad they're not tying Doctor Doom to Fantastic Four, because it's like, we've seen Dark Phoenix now twice, and we don't like it. Last Stand didn't work. Like, it's like, okay, anyway.
Last Stand didn't work, and Dark Phoenix definitely didn't work.
Exactly. I wasn't going to go too hard since you said you liked it, but it did not
I
work.
like it almost entirely just because I love McAvoy and Fassbender
They're
as
great.
Professor X and
Yes.
Magneto so much.
They are a great
and
duo.
that's some of their best stuff in Dark Phoenix.
Mhm.
But yeah, the general plot and all the stuff with Jean Grey, only okay.
Yes, yes.
But they are, I think, trying to have their cake and eat it too, like you said, because they're trying to say like, oh, remember all those old shitty movies we did? Well, those are kind of gone now, but also keeping the good ones that they previously did,
Yeah.
because at the end of the Marvels, there was also an after credit scene featuring Kelsey Grammer's Beast. So it's like,
Yeah.
are we going to see those actors again as those characters? Or
No.
I hope not. I wanted something fresh to start over, but
I
there's also
think we certainly will. Until they're done with the multiverse stuff, those X-Men are coming up.
Maybe they are, though.
as variants and stuff like that. But that's why it's so like the multiverse. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, no one's even keeping track of these phases because there's no good markers like there were for
No.
the first saga, the Infinity Saga. But we're almost through it. I mean, Phase 5 is coming to a close, and then Phase 6 is the end of the multiverse saga. So
Perfect.
hopefully, we're in the part of this saga where we're just biting the pillow and
Like a circumcision,
through it.
cut it and get it over with.
yeah. All my other notes up there looks like we already addressed. So is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about?
I really liked Nice Pool. That made me feel like how,
Nice
how
Pool was
people
good.
see me in the Star Wars community. Or the one scene in particular where he just looks at the camera and he's like, I liked everything since Endgame. That's how I feel a lot.
Like that was good. I also liked when he was like, I can also look at the camera and suddenly break the fourth wall.
Yeah,
And
the
what movie-
proposal.
The proposal. And then Deadpool's like, what the fuck was that? You think that's what I do?
I loved that. That
Yeah.
is such a good.
That was good.
Like
I
it's
liked it.
it's funny because I like the proposal and that was funny like in universe, and also that's a fun glimpse of how bad Deadpool could be. Like
Yeah.
it could be like that and it would suck.
Yeah.
I do love when he uses him as the human shield, and he's like, "What regeneration powers?" Like that didn't went too far, obviously, but like,
I thought that was funny.
I typically don't like gore, but him resuscitating his body without a head was hilarious.
I don't know if it qualifies as a cameo or Easter eggs, but a lot of the Deadpool variants were neat to see. Blake Lively was Lady Pool. They had multiple children as Baby Pool and Kid Pool.
yeah,
And who else did we say? Matthew McConaughey was
McConaughey.
Cowboy Pool. There
I
were a
don't
couple
count-
more. Nathan Fillion was one of them.
he was.
he was the head one.
Rob McElhenney got cut. You see that?
Yeah, I did see
Oh,
that.
really?
I'm excited to hear Rob McElhenney's story about that. I bet
Yeah.
he's bitter.
Yeah,
When you have to look up a cameo like that after a movie, that doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
That's why I said I don't even know if it's a cameo or
Yeah,
an
like-
Easter egg. It's
Adam Pally and Jason Sudeikis as the Stormtroopers in Episode 5 of Mandalorian Season 1,
No, yeah, that's a good example. That does not mean anything to me.
that's funny.
or Daniel Craig as the Stormtrooper in Force Awakens.
Yep. Yeah, it just goes to show the power of comedy because I said almost exclusively negative things about this movie for the last hour. Yet I really liked it. It was
so
it was a
good.
blast watching this
Yeah.
movie
It was-
because it was
it was a lot of fun.
hilarious.
It was very
Oh.
Deadpool. One last thing, I wanted to say this as far going like back to the story and like the ending and conclusion. It was kind of an unsatisfying. I was thinking it was gonna something was gonna happen to make it feel like an ending to an actual trilogy, even though I know we're gonna see Deadpool again.
Yeah,
Kind of like the third Spider-Man movie that came out. Like I know we're getting Spider-Man again, but the way that one ended, it felt like a
Yeah.
satisfying conclusion to that trilogy of
Mhm.
movies. And this one just didn't have it.
just
So
kind of stops.
there's one last negative thing to end this episode.
Well, we
on, but-
gotta see where TJ Miller is. You know, everyone's dying to see
Yeah,
where TJ Miller is because they're
exactly.
on such good terms.
Ugh.
Also, fuck the people sat next to Luke. They were so annoying.
Yeah, my movie theater experience, independence of Deadpool,
Yeah.
was poor.
They were talking like they never saw a movie before. They were like, oh, she's gonna die. Like it's like, yeah, probably. What are you doing? Like, why are you announcing that? And then one last thing is I love the ending where it feels like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when Dale walks away from Steve Martin and then Steve Martin replays everything in his head and is like, oh my God, he's got nowhere to go. His wife is dead. And so when Logan walks away, he's like, I'll figure it out. He walks away and then he's like, Logan. And he turns around and they go back to their home together. Just like Planes, Trains.
I like that. I thought for some reason you were going to talk about the
Jingle All the
ending.
Way. No, it's done.
No, the after credit scene where they show an extended version of an earlier scene. And Johnny Storm actually says all those vulgar things about Casanova.
That was a good post credit scene.
Yeah.
That was good. It
Cassandra
was
Nova.
Cassandra Nova. Well, I think her supervillain name is Casanova. That's
Is
what
it?
it's- Yeah, I think so.
That is a Mountain Dew flavor if I've ever heard one.
But I really liked it. It was a good end credit scene where it was meaningless. It doesn't like tie in anything. It was just pure fun. So kind of like this movie, just pure fun.
Exactly. We also never did talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, but that's
Do we
interesting.
need to?
But it's,
I
it's
invoked it there at the
it's another
end.
multiverse movie that did have great stakes, and the cameos were a lot more meaningful, and it was still story driven, and they got to do the gratuitous cameos as much as they wanted, and it worked a lot better.
But like he said in the movie, like we're just seeing too much of this now because we saw it with Spider-Man, we saw it with Doctor Strange, we saw it in Loki, and now we're seeing it here. And it's like, we get it, guys. We know how the multiverse works. Like, let's just tell a good story, wrap it up, and
We
move on to the
kind of
next.
understand. Do you guys know?
We understand that doesn't make sense.
You guys know one of the first movies, maybe if the first movie that has the after credit scene is?
Pirates of the Caribbean?
Avengers?
No.
Avengers. At least Iron Man.
No, not in the MCU, just in general.
Pirates of the Caribbean?
Damn it, no.
How early was it? Give me a year.
1987-ish.
Oh shit. 87?
Oh, is it Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
It is indeed
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that Pirates of the Caribbean has a post-credit scene?
No.
I never did either until
Black Pearl or what?
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Until
Black Pearl.
many years after I had been watching it. The monkey goes and takes one of the medallions out of the chest, which lets them all come back to life, which is a fairly important plot point that no one seemed to know.
Wow.
Huh.
Maybe they do the same thing with Deadpool's girlfriend.
We definitely watched the
gotta
end credit
rewatch.
scene in Deadpool 2, though. Well, we say that.
No, this was the end credit scene in Fan 4 Stick, actually. It was all leading up to Deadpool 3. If you didn't watch that, you're way off.
So they're going the Star Wars route.
Exactly.
And on that note,
Thanks for listening
Star
to
Wars.
us. Let us know what you think. You can reach out to us on social media at Force for Thought or email us at forceforthought@gmail.com.
see you, Sammy.